Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We are back in the currently sunny UK after spending a little bit of time in a number of different European countries. But we're back to the normal routine and hopefully back with a bang. This is going to be another jam-packed daily market update. I hope you guys sort of missed me being back in the studio as much as I have. We've got a lot to cover. Yesterday, of course, we had CPI for the US. The day before that, we had the Trump-Harris debate. We're not going to really spend too much time on that. I think Harris did a lot better than many people were expecting her to. Lots of people talking about ABC perhaps being biased. We're not going to get into all that. I will say, though, however, in my opinion, Harris did a lot better than I thought she was going to, given Trump's record of destruction when it comes to these debates, certainly against her predecessor. You know, she did better than Biden. That's maybe a little bit of positive feedback for her. And the elections are important to us as investors. Certainly the United States elections, because the United States is the largest proprietor of global liquidity. And we're going to be talking about global liquidity and where that's at, where that's heading, and what that means for Bitcoin towards the end of the video. But we've got a hell of a lot to cover. Obviously, you had CPIs coming out yesterday. The CPI in the US, the official stat was 2.5, having been at 2.9 the prior month. Ultimately, this is that continued deflation that we want, that ultimately is going to allow the Fed, or be one reason why they're now going to be stepping off the gas and lowering those interest rates, thus causing the dollar to come down and the risk markets to do very well. We've covered that a hell of a lot, and we're going to continue to do so. I did a meeting yesterday for my Patreons. Do go and consider becoming a Patreon. And where we're going to be starting the video off, actually, is in regards to miners. Now, we have one miner in the Patreon that we think is going to give altcoin-like returns, and actually that's just to the current target that we have for it. There is the potential for broader targets ahead of it, and it has everything to do with a number of things. One of them is what we're going to be starting the video off on, and that is looking at Marathon Digital Holdings CEO talking about how mining Bitcoin is a matter of national security. And I can actually agree with him here. I think there's a massive narrative. I think Bitcoin miners are going to outperform Bitcoin. They're going to be a higher beta play to Bitcoin, and we think Bitcoin is going to do very well as is. Remember, we've got lots of technical reasons for this. We will be looking, of course, at the Bitcoin chart in relation to global liquidity, talking about some on-chain metrics, talking about Eric Balanchunas, again, clowning Jim Bianco a little bit, who said the Bitcoin ETFs were a failure, Bitcoin obviously being the fastest growing spot ETF in history. We've got some news in regards to the UK, the communist UK. There's a new bill introduced in Parliament to clarify crypto's legal status. Now, this is very interesting. Essentially looking to classify crypto as personal property. Now, this sounds amazing. However, we have got to consider the regime that is currently in the UK and how they may view and look to tax. And remember, we were all told October was going to be a year we should prepare for. How they look to tax personal property. So we'll be talking about that. Where I want to start the video off, though, however, is with Marathon CEO Fred Thiel, somebody I'm familiar with. Bitcoin is a national security concern for this country. The US must maintain a dominance, not just in Bitcoin mining, but also in holding of Bitcoin assets in US companies. Now, the United States is one of the most powerful countries in the world. Of course, it has a lot to do with their ownership of the world reserve currency. It also has a lot to do with the companies that are under the United States' jurisdiction, like Google, like Apple, like Microsoft, and all these others, because they gain a superiority in the technological world as a result of this. Is why we don't allow Chinese companies in the UK and US, and vice versa. They don't allow Western countries in China. And I think the United States is about to get behind not only Bitcoin. Certainly, this is why we talk about elections. I think both parties have came out relatively friendly in regards to crypto. One being Trump more than the other. Just my take, certainly from what I've seen. But mining Bitcoin and Bitcoin itself and crypto more broadly is going to become a matter of US dominance. And this is ultimately going to be a massive bullish narrative in regards to the cryptocurrency space, on top of all the thousands of other bullish narratives that we have going around, also technically. So we're back. We wanted to sort of do a bit of a long introduction. Let's dive into this clip of Mara's CEO talking about Bitcoin being a matter of national security. I'm going to go ahead and mute my mic, and we will dive over to Twitter.
Bitcoin is of national security concern for this country. Russia is the world's second largest Bitcoin mining nation. countries that operate on a Bitcoin standard from a perspective of transacting and holding Bitcoin can transact outside of the sanctions environment. They can transact outside of government controls. If the US does not have a substantial amount of Bitcoin mining onshore, they can be locked out, and US companies can be locked out of transacting their Bitcoin. So strategic ownership of block space is of a national security concern. And that's why with 40% of global Bitcoin mining in the US must maintain dominance, not just in Bitcoin mining, but also in the holding of Bitcoin assets in US companies, whether they're ETFs, whether they're Bitcoin mining companies, whether it's MicroStrategy. But the US must maintain dominance because by the same reason the US holds 40% of the gold reserves in the world, they can exert influence in financial markets. They have to do that as the world transitions to digital currencies.
Okay, it's incredibly well said. Ben, do you have anything you want to add to that?
Yeah,
Very interesting. And this is, you know, I can see that. What's going to happen in the future? You know, are we all going to adopt a Bitcoin standard? I don't believe so. I think there's other cryptos out there that are going to play a far bigger role in actual money than Bitcoin itself. I don't think Bitcoin is going to work as a practical money for a number of reasons. Of course, it's not scalable, but then people say there's layer 2s out there like Lightning that can solve this. However, Satoshi in his white paper told you directly not to do this because then you're introducing a centralized kind of entity, if you will, or even though it's claimed to be in a decentralized manner. And also the volatility. You know, the one reason the dollar kind of works, and I say kind of because, they use it to tax all of us. I'm no fool to inflation and the devastating nature of it, but could you imagine everyone's wealth in Bitcoin and we go through a bear market? Now, of course, the pushback there is the longer-term trajectory, and I can't help but wonder, you know, if Bitcoin is a real threat to their system, you know, they could always do things to take it out, certainly in regards to manipulating it based on, you know, BlackRock's one of the largest holders of Bitcoin now. They own 2% of all the Bitcoin out there, and that's took them a matter of months to do that. Imagine where they're going to be in years. So this is bullish for us as investors. It always winds me up because the Bitcoin maxis is supposed to be these freedom-loving, you know, we don't like the current regime, and then they all cuddle up and suckle up to the current regime, which is interesting, of course. So, very interesting. I thought I'd play that clip. You know, we have a miner in the Patreon. Some people have actually just joined the Patreon just to get that miner and then, done with it what they will. Remember, we don't advise anybody on a financial basis. We just put forward what we're doing and let you guys make your own decisions as a result of that. But Bitcoin miners are going to do very, very well, and they're very much positioned for this. And we also think Bitcoin, technically, there's a lot of confluence in regards to the direction this space is going. Let's move on to some interesting news. So this is a new bill introduced in Parliament to clarify crypto's legal status. Tech-savvy owners of Bitcoin and other digital assets will benefit from greater legal protection thanks to the important clarification of the law. The UK introduces a bill officially and legally classifying crypto as personal property. Now, this has still got to go through. It's a bill. However, I mean, it's kind of interesting, isn't it? Because if it is now classed as personal property, well, how are they looking to tax that? And we know in October we're very much expecting tax cuts. I would say they're going to go after capital gains and a number of other things, even though they promise not to do that, just like they promise not to take anything away from the pensioners, the poor old pensioners. You know, let's take it from the old people. We'll see. This is a good step in the right direction, though. However, the UK did want to become a kind of crypto hub. Of course, part of that is getting laws into place. You know, crypto assets are going to become a matter of national relevancy, I think is the best way to put it. And we're living through that as we speak. And big news in regards to the UK actually announcing this. However, there's always yings and yangs in life. This is from Merit Bound Tuner. So this is obviously in rebuttal to Jim Bianco's Bitcoin is a failure. The Bitcoin ETF is a failure. Because it didn't really see boomer adoption. That will come. Another great fundamental reason to be bullish on the cryptocurrency space. So after all the drama, hand-wringing about the failure of the Bitcoin ETF, insert leads cop from Big Lebotsky laughing hysterically. Okay, real troll here. They back to taking in cash. Year-to-date net flows back over... high watermark of 17.1 billion. So it's not been a failure. And the 1 week and 1 month outflows have shrunk to less than 1% of the AUM. Probably turn positive soon if history is any guide. Wild how reactionary people are. Read the category, both CT and the haters. For crypto Twitter. You don't really get this with equity investors unless we in like a 2008 or March 2020 type situation. Probably because it's still so brand new. So the Bitcoin ETF hasn't been a failure unless you listen to Jim Bianco and Eric Balanchunas highlighting this with the inflows that we're now starting to see. We're not in a 2008 or 2020 situation. And I don't think we're going to have a capitulative event up until, really the end of this bull market. And my best guess on that is the back end of 2025. I could be totally wrong, though. That's just my own opinion. And I think the market's very much positioned for that. Could there always be a wobbler? Francis Hunt highlighting something exceptionally interesting in regards to oil and the direction you think that's heading in. Worth going and giving him a follow. You should be following him anyway and checking out what he has to say on oil. This is somebody who called a negative oil price before March 2020's events. Doesn't get any credit for it. An absolute technical genius in our opinion. This is from Crypto Quant. Bitcoin's next bull run. Decreasing Bitcoin reserves and rising stable coin reserves indicate a bullish outlook for Bitcoin as the market supply tightens and buying power builds. We could be on the verge of a price rally. Now, I think technically we look like that. Also, we've spoken at great length about technically what sort of a structure we think Bitcoin's in. We'll come on to that in just a second. What he's highlighting here is stablecoin reserves and, of course, stablecoin exchange net flows. So this is the first one, stablecoin reserves up. This is Bitcoin exchange reserves. Look at the capitulation here. You're down here in regards to even during this pullback. It's very interesting. You've seen accumulation from a number of different parts, and you've seen Bitcoin getting drained from reserves during this accumulation. And when we, as technical analyzers, look at this, we expect this to be a pullback in a broader uptrend. You'd expect to see these kind of things. However, I must say that these on-chain analysts, in a bear market, they're not so hot, are they? Talking about long-term liquidity, so this is one of our macro reasons. We think this is all led by the Dixie. We've got a lot of confirmation in regards to that. We ultimately think liquidity is going to uptick, and that will take us into going into 2026. This is from Julie Bittle, who I think is one of Raoul's individuals. Hang in there, bulls. And he's looking at the 12-week lead on total liquidity index. And you can see this kind of aligns with essentially what we think is around the corner for Bitcoin and crypto more broadly. And the altcoins have just capitulated under this weakness. These have been 20+% moves, some of these. But they shall rise again. And we shall see Bitcoin dominance rise, and we shall all be super rich. Of course, that is a joke. We shall see. But ultimately, I think this resolves in more upside potential. I'm going to do a video where I'm going to show maybe 20, 30 examples, because I can literally show that many of them, of a asset getting to new all-time highs, consolidating in this manner, and then seeing that broader continuation. And Bitcoin is on that similar trajectory. We've got 130K, 151K, and potentially a $309,000 Bitcoin price ahead of us. And generally, things look bullish wherever you look. So that is it from me, ladies and gents. A hell of a lot going on. We're going to keep you up to date on it every single day here on this channel, as we have been doing. Glad to be back in the UK. A little bit colder here, but what can you say? And I'm glad to be back reporting, as always, to you guys on this fine Thursday. We're going to be bringing it every single day, as we have been. So do become a subscriber. Do check out the Patreon. And on that note, I'm going to love and leave you guys. Thanks a lot for watching. See you all in the next one.